Africa Link.
In a surprising move that's sending shockwaves through regional trade, Malawi has slammed the brakes on imports of goods it believes can be produced locally. The government says it's about protecting local industries. This ban, while raising tough questions for traders, consumers, and neighboring countries, also holds the promise of bolstering local production and reducing the trade imbalance. Who wins when borders close in the name of self-reliance, and who pays the price? That's what's coming up. Stay tuned. My name is Josey Mahachi. Welcome to Africa Link, the podcast dedicated to keeping you informed about the stories that matter in Africa.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Let's talk about food imports in Africa, which boasts fertile lands. To many, that should not be the case. It is like borrowing a piece of meat from your neighbor to make soup. Isn't that shameful? Countries like Zimbabwe and Malawi, which were once considered the bread baskets of Africa, now rely heavily on food imports. But today, let's spare my home country, Zimbabwe, and talk about Malawi. 10 years after Malawi launched the Buy Malawian strategy, a campaign aimed at promoting and supporting local products, the campaign remains more of a slogan than a reality. Local production is struggling, and the country is grappling with one of its most severe trade imbalances. Imports are 2.5 times higher than exports, pushing the economy into a state of turmoil. Now, in a bold move, the Ministry of Trade has recently banned the importation of goods that can be locally produced in a bid to turn the tide. But will this intervention be effective? And why have Malawians been slow to embrace their own products despite years of advocacy? Well, joining me for the discussion is Bertha Lippa Phiri, Executive Director, Economic Justice Network, MEJN, and our own DW's correspondent in Lilongwe, Mirriam Kaliza. So I'll start with you, Bertha. Like I said, it's been a decade since the Buy Malawian strategy was launched. From a business standpoint, what do you think has gone wrong or went wrong?
For starters, initially it was meant to stimulate local production and growth by actually inspiring consumers to embrace what we call locally produced goods and services or products. Instead of importing them, they themselves should be able to build up the competitiveness of the enterprises that will lead into greater economic growth, but also increase the welfare of Malawians. Now, since inception, since the launch, we see the campaign around it being built to say we will no longer be importing much, but what we saw on the ground is that since the launch until now, importation has been on the higher figures, to an extent that even commodities that were not meant to be imported, we saw them imported. Now, the campaign was meant to steer or to lead into greater economic growth. The growth is not there. Year in, year out, when the budget statement is being presented, there are always projections that would grow by either 3% economic growth, but what we see really it is just within 1.8 to 1.9 economic growth. We are very far from the realization of the goals of Buy Malawi strategy, even though it was put in place. So coming down to your question, so for us, Malawi Economic Justice Network, the language has been Malawi needed to have grown the economy enough, which we are not seeing. You all know that our economy mainstay is agriculture, and that the produce that we do produce mostly are exported in raw terms. So talk of tobacco, tea, sugar, cotton, rice, just to mention a few. So all that building up to over 70% of the export earnings. So if you look and appreciate at the commodities being exported, really, the value in which it was supposed to be bringing to the country has not been very strong enough. And all along, what we see is that there is too much dependence on primary commodities like the ones I indicated that are raw produce. Not only that, technology and mechanization, industrialization, we're not still there in terms of industrializing our economy enough, but also looking into other potential sources of economy like mining. So all this bring down really the Buy Malawi strategy, because more than 80% of the commodities we need, we can't generate them in country. We aim at still importing all those valuable goods and services. So mechanization is still a challenge, industrialization is still a challenge, but also the nature of the product themselves, they are raw in terms of value. And so we need more than agricultural produce. So Buy Malawi strategy has really been associated in terms of that it falls short. It is actually insufficiency of the quality that Malawians would want to actually attest to.
Right, right. Now, turning to you, Mirriam Kaliza, our reporter on the ground, from your observation, what is the general feeling of local consumers when it comes to buying locally made products?
Thank you very much. I would say there's a mixed, generally growing sentiment towards buying locally made goods. Historically, there's been a preference for imported products, which are often perceived as being of higher quality. However, I could say in recent years, there's been an increasing push towards supporting local businesses, especially in light of efforts to promote economic self-sufficiency and reduce reliance on imports. So now I think Malawians are increasingly aware of the importance of supporting local industries to create jobs and boost the economy. Many people are seeing the value in buying locally made goods, particularly from small and medium enterprises. However, that said, challenges like availability of affordable locally made goods, inconsistent quality, and limited access to markets for these goods is still affecting the general attitude. Initiatives by both the government and private sector to promote local products have been helping to shift the mindset towards more positive perception of Malawian-made products. But there's a certain quota in the society that don't really associate with the locally made goods. For example, foodstuffs. A lot of our foodstuffs comes from South Africa. People perceive those as of good quality and they are nice, and maybe they are made affordability and stuff like those. So it's still really a mixed kind of perception.
Right, right. Now, Bertha, talking of quality, how would you describe the current state of Malawi's local production sector, particularly in light also of the trade imbalance the country is experiencing?
As it stands now, we are still importing more than we will import. Now, because the trade imbalance is actually in the negative figures, it simply means to say we may not have the capacity as at now to actually believe that we can survive based on the products, goods that consumers would want to live up with and also survive on. Efforts have been made as in through the Ministry of Trade to ensure that there is value addition, packaging, emphasizing on amplifying our product. Not only that, but also the Malawi blueprint, the Malawi 2063, is actually amplifying the cause on the same, that we should actually industrialize our economy as much as we can, adding much needed value to it. But it still remains a challenge in a way, because the trade in balance is still in the negative, that whatever we need, what sums up to be the needs, the particular needs of Malawians, do not actually match the production muscle or capacity the country do have.
Right, right. Now, looking at the Minister of Trade, Bertha, recently banning the importation of products that can be made locally. We're talking of maize meal, rice, vegetables, and etc. Do you believe this is a step in the right direction, though?
Yes, it is a step. It's a good step in the right direction, because looking and appreciating at the list that was banned, really, there are some of them you would actually say, what? Were we able to actually import like toothpicks? We grow soya and all that. We import a lot of confectionaries that we can even be able to produce and value our agricultural commodities to come up with those. So yes, it's a good direction towards Buy Malawi strategy.
The reason I'm
Yes.
asking is just a couple of weeks ago, I remember doing another podcast also on Malawi, where Malawians are complaining about the exorbitant pricing, especially of things like even the maize meal, the locally produced stuff. They're so expensive. So this is why I'm actually asking that. But maybe is there a difference in pricing when it's locally made products, or I don't know if you can just give us more light on that as well.
Yes, precisely. So that is very correct. So I was going to say the decision to ban in itself would look strategically for the agenda of Buy Malawi strategy. It was a good drive. It is a positive one, moving towards attending to that. But then it draws back to the same challenges I aired out, that local manufacturers still do face some obstacles internally. Now, because there are some obstacles, high cost of living, it's actually been appreciated. Even producers, businessmen, there is actually high cost of borrowing in country. So because of that, all that is translating into high cost pricing. You are right that maize has been very high. It is only 2 days ago that we were appreciating that maize has actually gone down very reasonable, like 3-4 times more down. Perhaps it's an election year, one would wonder. But what I'm saying is that the decision itself is good, but in country we are not fully resourced for it, because the banning would translate into depriving the rural masses who have been already be crying with the price of the basic needs. So yes, it is a plus in strategy terms, but that translating very badly to Malawians, and that prices keeps on going up, 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 and that is not keeping well and sitting well with most Malawians. But the decision itself might be good, but not in the coffers of Malawians who are suffering, and consumers who are actually suffering on the market because they cannot get fairly priced consumption of the items that they would want.
Right, right. We have Miriam here who has access to most of these ordinary Malawians when she does her reports. Miriam, how are the Malawians then responding to the import ban, especially those in the markets and shops?
For consumers, they might not be really be glad that the ban has happened because they've got maybe quality concerns. Some consumers are saying locally produced goods are still on the lower side of quality compared to the imports, especially if maybe they are unfamiliar with the local products. You know, at a household level, you have your own set of goods that you use maybe on daily basis. Now to just change abruptly like that, it's really difficult. On the other hand, for the producers, it might look like the government is supporting them, but they also have a set of challenges in terms of meeting the demands and also successfully reaching the standards that people might want. So it's really chaotic and mixed in that sense.
And have you encountered any stories of local producers, Miriam, who are also benefiting or struggling because of this new development?
Obviously, some are struggling because now they have to produce more than they were used to, and like Bertha is saying, the pricing of things is also on the higher side. So it means the producers have also to increase their prices of the things that they produce. So they are benefiting. Also, it's also a burden on them. I can say.
Now, Bertha, let's talk about Malawians as well, their response to this policy shift. We are talking about the role of pricing now, quality, packaging. All these play a role in influencing consumer choices between local and imported goods, like what Mirriam just said. Like if I'm used to product A in my house, shifting to product B because it's made in Malawi, it needs a lot of convincing, honestly. So let's talk about that.
Generally, there is frustration, so to speak, because the ban wouldn't be a means to an end where if they would think they are banning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Malawians would automatically go into looking for locally produced commodities. We still have a number of small-scale medium businesses, owners, women who also do travel cross-border trading to nearest countries like Tanzania, Zambia. The ban would be made, yes, but still more, there would be some smuggling of such commodities, only to attest the same fact what Mirriam said, to say people are used to the brands that they would be utilizing in their houses, be it in the office. So the reaction from the consumers is mixed. Others would say they just want to show off that this is an election year, one politicking and everything, but really it also varies from one region to the other. But generally it's frustration because the policies are put when we have not graduated enough to make sure and attest to the fact that we can produce those in country and make them available in the market.
And Bertha, in your view, what long-term strategies do you think should be put in place to genuinely strengthen local industries beyond banning imports? Because obviously this was a good strategy, honestly, for Malawians to be encouraged to buy Malawi brands or Malawian stuff. It's a good strategy, and I actually feel like a lot of more African countries should do that. I'm from Zimbabwe. It would be a good thing that we are being encouraged to buy and also produce things in our countries and to buy our own products. But what do you think then should be the long-term strategy?
Malawi should create that enabling environment for global investment, which we do not see mostly. By Malawi strategy does not really mean that it should be products by Malawians, but products produced or manufactured here in country. It would be investors. So the enabling environment also is something to look into for investors to come into Malawi, because as at now, our market struggles to grow. There is a struggle in growth. There is minimal investment. So it's really a vicious cycle. To make matters worse, this cycle has actually caused lack of critical foreign currency in country like US dollars, and just to mention some. And then you would wonder to say, how could we boost trade when we fall short and we are in deficit of forex in country? So that enabling environment that investors come in to work in, boost our industries, ourselves also, whilst we are boosting our economy and being competitive in the market. So it is not there. Why we don't have enabling environment? It draws back to the policies that are put in place, the monetary policies, the interest rate charges, and all that, making it hard to manufacturers in country because there is a high cost of borrowing needed, the taxation issues, the disincentives that are there, that is stifling the growth of production capacity in the country. So these are some of the policies, the macro policies that we craft as a nation. They are done by people. They can actually be reversed and look into it so that we create that environment for further investment so that our products are competitive. It may be Malawians investing, but also other individuals, foreign investors coming, but actually producing, actually industrializing the economy in country. So in long term, those are some of the messages that we have been sharing going forward.
Yeah, Mirriam, do you have anything to add?
More than anything, I think the Buy Malawi strategy lacks and needs political will. if there are stronger voices from those in authority, maybe it could make a big difference. This would also mean maybe chiefs in the villages, whoever is in authority, should speak about this more authoritatively. Maybe things can change. And also to the consumers, we need to be proud of our own country and proud of our own products, things that we can produce. To the producers, please raise the standards. Because, I mean, if you've got a bit of money, you want your life to change. So why should you buy something on the low standard just because you want to support somebody or products that are produced locally? Give people the things that they want, they'll buy them.
Right, you have touched obviously on the buying Malawian to move from policy talk to true grassroots impact there. But Mirriam, as we wrap up our discussion, since you still have the mic, what lessons can you learn, or rather Malawi can learn from other neighboring countries in the region in terms of, I mean, of course, you've mentioned of quality, and Bertha spoke of investor-friendly environment and things like that.
I think the number one problem that we have is we import a lot and we export less. That's the number one problem. If we reduced on the imports and increased on the exports, it would have maybe put us on the same level as other countries or neighboring countries. And also, people really buy their own stuff. In Tanzania, for example, they manufacture a lot, textiles and everything. Us, what we do is go buy from Tanzania, go buy from South Africa. They are producing these things in their own countries, and people are consuming in their own countries, and they're exporting. We can also do that. We have the capacity. I think so. We can also do it.
Absolutely. Yes. And Bertha, now as we wrap up our discussion, your final words, if you had the ear of policymakers and the public today, what one message would you want to deliver about supporting made in Malawi products?
My key message would be that policy-wise, we do have the papers, we do have the strategies, and just to mention to you that outside the Buy Malawi strategy, we also have Malawi 2063 and its medium-term implementation plan, the 10-year plan, which actually amplifies the Buy Malawi strategy agenda, that agriculture has to be commercialized, not only that, but also industrialize our economy, private sector investment. So one key message would be that action, action, and action. Let's attest to the fact that the policies are there, beautifully put, and so it's just one step into actualization of what policies are meant to actually achieve. Invest in sustainable measures, but also at times we get deprived of our own efforts because of the just some harmful tax measures. You find there is someone coming to invest, and then we're giving all these incentives that would actually not benefit our economy in a long run, but also depriving a local producer's effort to compete in the market. You have Malawians in country, they are being taxed heavily, and then someone is benefiting from the incentives, tax holidays. They do their business and they leave, making huge profits, depriving fellow competitors who are Malawians. So it also draws back to our tax measures that we put in place, so that the Buy Malawi strategy would actually be a reality and not just something put on paper. So those would be my remarks, that not all hope is lost. The roadmap and the key policies are there, clear-cut strategies, plans. We just need action into that. And so when we do that, we'll be able to realize, to say, okay, these are the policies in place, and then these are the actions that are actually matching what we aspire to be as a nation.
Right. Thank you so much, ladies. Bertha Lippa Phiri and Mirriam Kaliza, for joining us here on DW Africa Link.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
As you have heard in the conversation, Malawians prefer products from their neighbors. But Botswana imports food products from as far as Germany, Thailand, Japan, and Brazil. The new administration under President Duma Boko wants to ensure that people have access to high quality, better priced food products. With that mindset, can Africa be food reliant, meaning can it produce enough food to meet its own needs without relying on imports? We at Africa Link will keep the conversation going. That's it for this edition of Africa Link. Remember, you are not just a listener, but a vital part of our community. Your engagement can shape the direction of our discussions, and we value your insights. We encourage you to share your thoughts with us. You can find all of the Africa Link podcast episodes on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts from. This episode was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabi. My name is Josephine Mahachi. Thanks for listening. Until the next one, it's bye for now.